everyone. This is Gabrielle. Welcome to another episode. Hi, everyone. Hi. This is Gabrielle. Welcome to another episode of Let's Talk Money with Friends. Every Wednesday, we have the privilege to come to you to talk about money and everything else. We say on our show that money encompasses everything. And by that, we said money is about your health, your mental health as well. So tonight, we're gonna be discussing your credit score. Your credit score is very important. That's why the topic is your credit score matter. But when I was having a conversation this week with our friend, our guest tonight, Curtis Chambers, he said, Gabrielle, I wanted to go deeper. And it's very important to go deep when you are trying to explain certain principles that many of us have to deal with every day. And he wanted to bring a theory or like a practice. I think it's like his own understanding that he's bringing to the community. And it's called forward self, and he's gonna try to explain that to you tonight. He's gonna explain it to you tonight. Actually, he's been explaining it to me all week, and I know it's gonna make a difference. So yes, we say money encompasses everything. Your credit matters, but at the end of the day, you must understand where you at, where you want to go, and how to get there. And tonight, we're going to do that. Now, without further ado, we would like to encourage you to call your friends, your family. I always say now, call one friend, call two friends, because we want you to get them involved. We want you to let them know that Let's Talk Money with Friends is not only for me, it's not only for you, it's for them too. So, without further ado, why don't I welcome my friend who's on the line tonight, Curtis Chambers. Curtis, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Gabrielle. It's always a pleasure and an honor to be on your broadcast, your podcast, your platform, because you are changing the world one
Oh,
episode
wow.
at a time. And I mean that sincerely.
Yes, Curtis, I know you used to be a regular like before, and then we took a break, and then now, the first person, one of the first people that I called, I was like, Curtis, you remember? You are my partner in crime here. You gotta
Yes,
come back on the show because I always love to hear from you, and I know the audience is gonna learn so much from you tonight. But why don't you introduce yourself, let people know a little bit about who you are and what you've been doing and how you build community.
I appreciate that. And I think of it as being a partner in shine because we are definitely illuminating in this
Yes.
dark times because it is very dark. My name is Curtis Chambers, and I am a financial counselor, an accredited financial counselor to be more specific, and I'm a
Mm-hmm.
trauma of money practitioner. So I know it's a mouthful, but what that is basically is we use a trauma-informed lens to approach money. So when you talk about credit, there's a gap between you and that credit. We want to separate you from that score, not you internalizing that. We want to separate you from whatever it is going on to understand that these are just markers and mileposts, not necessarily
Yeah.
something that you want to internalize. And so, in my help with working with folks, sometimes it's cohort learning, sometimes it's workshops, and sometimes it's situations like this so we can educate the masses.
Yes, the other day you invited me to a workshop, and I really, really wanted to attend because I know I was gonna learn something valuable. But unfortunately, it was like right in the middle of town. And I'm like, it was like I wasn't gonna have enough time to leave where I was to get on the train to make it there. And I'm like, definitely, when you got on the Zoom today, I say, Curtis, please, when it's closer, let me know because I want to be one of the first one there, once there. We've been talking about money forever. I started getting interested in financial services when I was in high school. And of course, went to school for it. Just like you, we went to the college route. We learned about principles of finance, principles of how to make money. And then I went to my church. I remember I was telling you that offline. Went to my church one time and I was like, I know a thing or two that most people don't know. Why don't I offer a class here? I was very young, had plenty of time in my hands. So I said, okay, I'm going to do a class. And the class was God, Money, and You. Now,
Hmm.
because I was young and naive, here I am at the church teaching principles, but I had no idea what the real lived experiences of the people because I had
Hmm.
never experienced hardship in my life. I had lived a pretty, very easy, I would say, privileged life in some ways because I have two parents. I had a mother who slaved away to make sure we had everything, and also to I had a community. I have a large family. I'm one of seven, and I'm the centered child. So, I got everything. My older
Absolutely.
sisters were there for me. So, because of that, I didn't understand what families were going through. So, this month, May is mental health awareness month.
Hmm.
So, what are some of the correlations between like mental health and credit? Can you share that with us? And also, as it pertains to your formula of forward self.
Absolutely. It's a wonderful question and a great launching point because when we talk about, there's leading indicators and there's
Mhm.
lagging indicators. And
Yeah.
and so one of the leading indicators for me would be a credit score. Sometimes we look at stress, right? And it's the
Mhm.
cause of or related to anxiety, emotional
Mhm.
distress. And if I even look at my credit score, get notifications, because now there's an incessant onslaught. I just got an email today telling me about my credit score, and it's like, I remember when I would open it up and it would say, unfortunately, your credit score dropped. Those things are tied to low self-esteem. Sometimes it's
Yes.
tied to hopelessness, feelings of shame. And you know what feelings of shame can lead to? Is despair. You feel it in your chest. These are very real things that you feel, and it's in your body. It's not like, when you hear someone say, I got a gut feeling or a sinking feeling, those are real things. They
Mm.
become cliches, but you really do feel it in your body, Gabrielle. And so when you're not feeling great, you may not sleep well, and therefore you're
Yeah.
not going to be your best the next day at work, or you're not going to make the best decisions. And so you're compromised. And if you're not making the best decisions, then it can have a ripple effect, and those things lead to your credit score continuing to struggle. So you see how you can get caught on that hamster wheel, and
Yeah.
and it's not, something that's totally your fault, things that you can fix, but there's other things at play that I'm sure we're going to talk about in this next hour.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. That feeling of hopelessness. I remember several years ago when you first came on the show. After the show, I spoke to you about a situation that I personally was experiencing, and you gave me guidelines. You gave me some directives on how to resolve that problem, and I instantly, like almost like simultaneously or like immediately, that
Hmm.
feeling that I was feeling kind of went away because I had steps, I had directives, I had directions from you on how to go from A to B. So you're saying like when you go into mental health, because one of the things that I heard was that I read to my research is like, mental health, your mental health can be impacted, but you going through mental health issues can also lead to bad credit. Because
Absolutely.
if you have bad credit, then we're using the word bad credit. I'm sure you're gonna just talk about that. But in this country, it's either good credit or bad credit. When your
Hmm.
credit score is not up to par, it's not excellent. You can feel a certain way, like you said. You feel like a failure. You feel like you don't deserve to ever be able to qualify for anything. And the world actually, everyone tells you you don't qualify for
Hmm.
anything. But when you also, if you are not mentally stable as well, that could lead to that financial that situation as well. Is that what you were saying?
Absolutely. And it's something that really drags you down because, the finances and your emotions and your mental health and your physical health, they're all tied together. A lot of times we like to compartmentalize and put them in
Mhm.
separate buckets, but it's there all together. If you can think about those old socks or a sweater where you had a little string pulling out and you try to snatch it and it makes a bigger hole, it's all connected and you can't separate those things. And it is tough because it's something where it will cost you more of your mental health and stability. It will cost you more of your finance. I remember getting offers for, and it would always seem like they knew the worst time. The devil is in the details, and he's a liar because when
Exactly.
you're going through that struggle, you'll get an offer and it says, hey, we can give you a little bit more credit. When you have those subprime credit cards
Mm-hmm.
and they have the worst interest rates ever. And they'll say, hey, you
26%,
need yes,
30%.
exactly, because now they're in the 30s. And
Yeah.
so, hey, you need an extra $250, Gabrielle? You need an extra $300, Curtis? Sure, it's going to cost you 20 bucks to get a credit line increase. It's like, why would it cost me if my credit's good and I want to increase my credit with
Mm-hmm.
that particular merchant or bank? I should be able to. I don't necessarily say you
Mm-hmm.
could or will need to, but if you are, why would it cost me money and 35% interest rate or what have you? Because sometimes people are hard up for cash. So when your credit's bad, quote unquote, then it costs you more. And when your credit's good, they're throwing things at you and you get all these perks. And I know what it was like to do that because I got to save money with a good credit score when I'm going,
Oh yeah.
travel and things like that and get to stay in certain, upgrades. So there's a flip side. And so there's, it's equal, and on the other end, we just want to get people on the other side of it so they're not making compromised
Yeah.
choices.
So you had mentioned when we're offline, you talked about the structure vulnerability. Can we talk a little bit about that without without losing anybody? and those things that have structurally that could lead to questionable or challenging credit. And you just
Yeah.
mentioned something about like being overcharged or, things.
Hmm.
Yeah, go ahead.
Absolutely. When you can go so many different areas, there's wealth extraction happening all around. I grew up in Roxbury and I remember people coming in and looking at properties, making offers, like ridiculous offers for single family homes 15, 20 years ago. And I know now why they were doing it because they saw where the pendulum was going. And so you'll see wealth come out of a community in the form of, the check cashers and things of that nature, or the ATMs where you have to pay $3 and they will
Mhm.
only let you get up to $200. So it's like, okay, man, I really needed 450. So I'm gonna have to do two or three different transactions to get to
Okay.
that. And I have to pay $3 each time. So
Hmm.
those little things add up. Okay, what's 5, $6? Well, it's a lot when you break it into percentages of accessing my money. And so now that may get me into an overdraft situation. And I'm old enough to remember overdrafts when they were less than $20. And now they're like $37. So these
Yeah.
things can really cost you. And if
Hmm.
you're late now because you didn't have the money or something it was not paid, now your credit score suffers. And it becomes a cycle where because your credit is lower, sometimes your rates increase. That's one form of wealth extraction. Then you go to the supermarket and you realize the box of cereal, you don't have to squeeze your hand this wide anymore. You have to do like this because the box is thinner and it's costing more. So that's known as shrinkflation, where it's not only inflation where the price went up, but you shrinked or
Shrink.
shrunk, rather, let me use proper English since we're on the
Hmm.
call. You shrunk what I was receiving. So I used to go to the supermarket every 2 weeks. Now I got to go every 10 days. So I'm
Okay.
wasting gas, or I'm using an Uber, or I'm, using my favorite economy, right? Meaning I have to ask a favor. Hey, Gab, can you take me to the store? And not every time you're going to be able to, and I don't feel good having to
Yeah.
ask you to do that. So those things take a toll on me mentally. And those are just a few examples of the
Yeah.
finances with the mental health as well,
Yeah.
causing money to leave my household.
Yeah, you talk about extraction. Extraction is such a thing. It's definitely something that I really never, I never made that correlation. I never really thought about it when I was younger, because I thought that, like I said, in school we talked about personal responsibilities, like how do you go from A to B, and these are some of the principles you need to use in order to get from A to B. I know one of the things that is very prominent when people are going to families are going to financial challenges, especially credit, the blaming and the relieving of the mistakes. Blaming, how many of us replay past financial mistakes in our minds? How important is it to focus on moving forward instead of looking backward?
I'm taking a moment intentionally to model the behavior. I breathe in and breathe out. I want to forgive myself for my past mistakes.
Yes.
Nobody is perfect, and we know if we know better, we do better. Some instances, there's things that I was taught, well, not verbally, but by the time I was 8, 9 years old, I might have internalized my money personality. I listened to my grandmother, your abuela, your uncle, your grandfather, your dad, your mom, your older brothers. You said you were in the middle. So you got the chance to see how
Yeah.
people interacted with money, and we internalized those things. And sometimes we thought it was okay to do the things that we did, or we did what we needed to survive. So I don't want to punish myself for things that I can't, undo because I can't undo the past. Those things, those experiences help me grow. Just like that, that girlfriend or that boyfriend that wasn't the best for me. I learned from that.
Yes.
Hopefully, I don't repeat those mistakes, but it
Yes.
is a story that can become a source of inspiration. That's why I like for us to be in community when you all talked about wanting to come to one of our recent workshops, because if I openly and honestly share with transparency, hopefully I can help someone else's story and
Yeah.
understand that I'm not alone. It's not a situation of misery loving company. It's just saying, oh, that isn't just me. So why am I beating myself up? That seems to happen when XYZ comes to bear. So it allows me to forgive myself and understand that, there were some things in place. Again, I know we're getting into it, but you'll see there's some things systemically going on. Auto insurance just jumped up after COVID and, doubled for some people. And so you had to make a decision. Do I buy this or do I buy that? Do I pay this or do I pay that? So it's not a you thing. There's more things bigger than us. So we just have to really, not ruminate on things, but allow ourselves to breathe and eliminate that shame and that guilt.
Yeah, the shame and the guilt and forgiving yourself. You had said to me earlier that acknowledgement without self Acknowledgement without self-compassion is
Mhm.
just another form of punishment. Did
Mhm.
you hear that? Acknowledgement without self-compassion is just another form of punishment. You are
It-
being punished enough, my friend. Let me
Constantly.
look at the camera now. You are being punished enough, my friend, every single
Yes.
day. Decisions that are being made that are outside of your control, that are impacting you every single day. That's why we talk about credit. You thinking that you pull in your credit report, you seeing a number, you think it's all you. It's not all you. Okay.
Hmm.
That's why, again, you mentioned, forgiving yourself, but in isolation, it's very difficult to forgive yourself in isolation because you're going to be internalizing a lot of the shame and really not have the resources that you need around you to help you. Now, I know, again, you had invited me to the workshop that you've been doing throughout the state here, and also especially in Boston, to really inform and educate and empower individuals about the importance of maintaining great credit and some of the ways that they can go about doing it. I heard someone, I know actually for years because I grew up. You talk about like being part of, I'm like the third child, right? Or the fourth child, I'm the middle child.
Hmm.
And, it was like, don't use credit. For many years it was don't use credit until I learned what credit really, how credit is. They say cash is king, and I feel like credit is queen, right? But what does that mean when someone said, don't use credit? Using credit is bad. What would you say? What would be the reason why, historically, why would someone like proclaim don't use credit?
Sometimes it's to help save people from themselves. It's like a shortcut. It's like, hey, I don't have time to tell you all the things. Just don't do that. And I'll tell
Yeah,
you very briefly. I mean, I've been in college so many moons ago, but I remember in mid 90s and, I was half paying attention, kind of yawning and just kicking back at a celebration, because we were at Boston University scholarship program. We were
yeah,
coming in at the academic scholarship. And I was like, when this guy stopped talking, please, because we want to get to the food and the festivities. And he just said, I don't care if you don't remember me, remember this. Leave those guys alone outside. And it was credit cards. And so I'm like, I didn't understand why is he saying that? Because that sounds antithetical. It just seemed like
yeah.
I want that. That's free money. Because dumb Curtis at that age thought that that meant free
Mhm.
money, and it doesn't. And so if if he had to be quick about it, and because I had that mentality, he would say, if he was talking to me personally, don't use credit because it doesn't seem like
Mhm.
you're ready for it, but there's more to it. So it's like,
Okay.
okay, now that I'm ready to sit down, let's talk about it. Why are people saying that? Some out of fear, like
Mhm.
they're trying to help save you from something, some out of ignorance, not ignorance in
Yeah,
a bad way, not dumb, meaning you just don't know what you don't know.
yeah,
Because I can leverage. Anyone ever use a lever? If you want to move a boulder and you have this levered pipe, you
yeah.
can use that to get, stronger than what you could on your own. So what do I mean by that? I could go and leverage the bank and say, hey, I'd like this piece of property. I know you guys are charging, $600,000. I don't have 600,000, but I have 60,000. And so therefore I get to have something. There's that leverage. My 60 now is worth 10 times as much because I got access to a piece of property or an asset that is worth 10 times that
Mhm.
amount. And so I can use that for cash flow if I wanted to rent it out or Airbnb or whatever place for me to live as well. But I now have access to something that I normally wouldn't. So credit, it allows me to have cash flow. I can still do my thing with my business or I can do whatever I need to do here and have access to something that's used as a tool. Most probably the most famous tool for building wealth is homes. And so
Yeah.
in some countries it is difficult to access mortgages or even, business loans. So having that credit is something that says, yes, I can stand in the place of me having to have these things in hand. So it's not a bad thing in and of itself. It, what do you do with that tool? What do
And
you
high
do with it?
informed, yeah, you're saying high informed and educated because we've been talking about home ownership, and I'm glad you made that. You gave that example. The week before last, we had a gentleman. He's a mortgage officer, and we're saying like, listen, in order for you to acquire that piece of property, you need to find it. But of course, you need to finance it because
Hmm.
very few people have, unless you have like a trust fund, you don't have $500,000 to write a check to purchase a property. So you definitely do need to use credit. But right now we're using credit for a number of things like education, to go to school, even that university, grad school, you gotta use credit in order to do that. I know credit cards every day in order for you to leverage, you leverage in other people's money. in order, or banks money in order for you to be able to have a lifestyle. So education is key. Again, going back to your workshop, when you're part of a community, you understand how to use it and how to best use that tool in order for you to get to the next level. It's definitely something that we want to encourage. That's the reason why we're saying today your credit score matter. But of course, being maybe in the mental health awareness month, we did not want to leave this month because we have so many shows already planned. And when I was like, I need to do something that will correlate, mental health. And I feel like credit is, oh my gosh, when you don't have quote unquote good credit, it's detrimental.
You're
It's really
stuck.
tough. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah.
yeah, I'm glad you said that. So some of the practical ways, because folks are listening right now and they're paying attention. I know for me, let me give a testimony because I think it's very always important to give a narrative.
Mm-hmm.
You came on the show and I was saying, Curtis, I'm struggling here. And you were so kind. You stayed after the show, you spoke to me and you said, Gabrielle, do X, Y, and Z. And I immediately, because I'm a good student like that, when I
Yes.
hear teacher,
Yeah.
I move. And I
Yes.
heard you, and I went the next day. I took action, and I was able to, like I think it was 6 months later. I called you. I was Curtis. Guess what? I got an A
Mm-hmm.
because the
Mm-hmm.
situation had improved tremendously. Like, oh my gosh, because again, the fear of having had bad experience. I'd had a real bad experience, and I kept saying, I'm never gonna do this again. I'm never gonna do this again. I'm always gonna use, this type of mean to get to what I want to do. But when
Mm-hmm.
you spoke to me and you were kind enough to do that, I was able to improve my life, and it has helped me tremendously. So I would like for you to kind of give some talking points and some yeah, advice to those who are looking here, who are watching, who saying like, I really would like to get to a better place, but I don't know how. What would you suggest?
One thing I do want to suggest is, understanding that these things are connected. So when you have a plan, it's
Uh-huh.
not restricting, it's freeing, it's liberating. So,
Yeah.
one of my most important plans is a spending plan. And
Mm-hmm.
so some people call it something else called a budget. And
Yeah.
so I don't use that term often because it does feel kind of sad or kind of
Yeah.
down and withholding me from my fun. But I need a spending plan because I want to know where my money goes. I have to remember the foundational pillar of the curriculum for itself is awareness. That's the
Mm-hmm.
very first piece. We're not
Yeah.
doing anything yet. We're not taking any action just yet. We want to be aware of how our body feels, aware of the system, aware of the snares.
Mm-hmm.
And so if I'm aware of where my money's going, then I'm also aware of the tricks and the traps for, oh wow, if my credit score is this, I pay higher interest rates. If my credit score is that, I got to pay more fees. I got to pay a huge down payment with my auto insurance, all these things. And so being aware of what my body's saying to me and things that are happening, I also see now they're making it easier for me to do things and put it on forepay, Klarna, Afterpay,
Mm-hmm.
whatever the case is. And I always thought those were for like couches, for
Mm-hmm.
trips or what have you. And I've seen them there, but now I'm seeing it where people are even using that, Gabrielle, for burgers. Literally just
Really?
to go to the sub shop, you can put that on an Afterpay now. You're telling me it's going to take me four payments to pay for the $18 of sub food or whatever I'm getting from the pizza shop?
Wow.
That's where we're at. If that's a call, that's a signal. That's not a shame or a judgment. It's to say there's an alarm, there's smoke going on here. We need some help
Mm-hmm.
because if I can't pay for that, pizza shop, fee, and it's usually between 15 and $25, then there's something really amiss. And it's not just the fact that you're using Afterpay, it's the fact that you're using that for this. It means you're typically using it for other things as well. And miss one payment, and this whole thing can come tumbling down, and it's not helping you. Notice
Mm-hmm.
how the thing, remember, we're going to be aware of the system. Usually, if it's something like we were talking about a home or a credit card, at least I can get some good points on my credit score when I pay on time, when I show responsible use. But notice that there's some things like our cell phone or for most people, their rent does not show up on a credit score. For most, and there's some times now where you can get it listed, but those things are not showing up on the positive side so that I could use it as a tool. So I want to be aware of the landscape and say, why am I doing this? Is there another way? What else could I be doing? Where's my money going if I use, Uber Eats to pay for my food and the
Mm-hmm.
bill comes up? My mom said it was $74 because she couldn't get out as much as she used to. And I was like, for what, $36 worth of food? She's like, yeah, twice as
Exactly.
much. I said,
Yeah.
lesson learned.
Lesson
Call me
learned.
next time. I'll go pick it up for you because $75 for $30 worth of food, it's not a smart deal, but that's how
It's
they're
not a
getting.
Yeah, you gotta be smart. And sometimes I'm glad you said that, Curtis, because you could think you probably, I mean, before I spoke to you, I probably thought I knew everything. Because again, remember, Gabrielle went to school for finance. I worked in banking for years. I was a financial advisor. Here I was with all the knowledge, and yet I'm making mistakes. I'm making mistakes because when you internalize certain shame, when you go on through certain personal challenges, you cannot think. That's why again
Hmm.
community matters. We talk about community all the time. Let's Talk Money with Friends is a community. I know many of you are very intelligent. You have multiple letters behind your name, and
Hmm.
it's fine. But I think you still want to be part of this community and listen to what we have to say, because you never know. I always believe that one thing somebody say, one thing that is you hear could change your life. And I
Hmm.
think that night, out of the blue, I opened up and I spoke to you, and it did change my life. So the same way, I would encourage you, if you are there, if you are watching and you're saying like, what are some of the practical ways? One of the ways is to be part of community. Don't be in isolation. If you cannot go to a workshop, participate and be part of this workshop that we do every night, not
Hmm.
every night, every
Week.
Wednesday night.
Hmm.
Participate, ask questions, reach out to Curtis, because he has the workshop, and he has, he has knowledge that he could share with you, and you could participate and be part of his community. Call me, reach out to me. I wanted to say that, I just shared my testimony, but I'm sure you must have a testimony of, because I'm sure the people, I'm not the only one who's come to you and say, Curtis, this is where I was, dire situation. And I came in and I learned the emotion and the fear and the shame behind that. And then I've moved over here and I'm there. I'm in a much better place. Can you give us an example? And what can you, and not only example, like the difference between like the person demeanor from where you remember they were to where they are not at now.
Absolutely. Without
Mhm.
question. I have several people, and one's coming to mind that shared, I took what you said and I took that baton and ran further. And I was like, what do you mean? Well, I'm learning now that there is a connection between what goes on. You just said, and you so astutely observed that I went to school for finance
Mhm.
and I worked in this field, and yet when the time came, there was a disconnect. Why didn't it match up? And I tell people all the time, I do events and I'll bring my little trusty friend. Can you see my brain here?
Yeah.
And so, and I won't go too deep into it and get all in the weeds, but when you see the parts of the brain, there is,
Uh-huh.
our
Medulla
reptilian.
is the medulla
Yes,
somewhere
there's
over
yes in there. Exactly. I didn't, I'm glad you know that. But there
here.
are parts of our brain that, it'll shut off other parts. Just like our body, I learned, if there's ever a time when things are really bad or it's cold, all the
Yeah.
blood, all the resources are going to go towards the middle because that's where our resources are, and they'll
Yeah.
they'll sacrifice limbs and everything. So same
Mhm.
thing. Well, there's a center here that will shut off the CEO, the executive portion of our brain,
Yeah.
and say, well, we're not thinking logically right now. We're just trying to survive. And so,
Mhm.
yes, you had all the book knowledge, top down learning. You had all the things MIT, Harvard could teach you, whoever,
Yep.
from the masters, but that's top down. That was just the book smart. And I know this, but when the alarms went off and the fire alarm goes off, that's gone. That you don't,
Yeah.
that wall shuts up. So you don't even have access to that smart
Mhm.
guy, that CEO brain, that
Correct.
queen. So if I don't have access to her, she can't give me the pearls of wisdom. What else do I have? And
Mhm.
so he's like, I took that deeper and I realized, Curtis, that there's a connection between our gut and our brain. He said, even some of the things that we eat or we're not allowed to eat, or, and so that can control our mood and therefore our health and our decision making, talking about the gut brain connection. And I started going down that rabbit hole, a positive rabbit hole. And I was like, ooh, I'm going to incorporate that into my learning. And so he is a wealth of knowledge on that now because of the fact that he sees that there's a tie-in between things that he's ingested and
Mhm.
their studies. And I encourage you, like you said, look into the camera. Well, I encourage you,
Yeah.
all that are under the sound of my voice, to look up the gut brain connection. There's an axis called the vagus nerve that is the
Mhm.
longest thing that goes from the brain all the way down to the gut. And I thought it was the
Oh.
brain sending signals to the gut. It's the other way around,
Mhm.
folks. The gut sends signals to the brain. So there's certain things that we're ingesting that leads to us being depressed. There's certain things that we're ingesting. So it's like, wow. So when we talk about systemic challenges, you are feeding us these foods that you have in the bodegas and the corner stores and all these things. And you will hear those CEOs, because there's been plenty in the last couple of years, just Google it, where the CEO says on a microphone that he didn't know or she didn't know, I would never feed my kids that crap. I would, but you're the CEO of that company and you're feeding it to my
Mhm.
kids. These are the things that are going on. So when those kids are being labeled as bad in school, when they're, getting these challenges, you didn't even know that it was something else. It's not them. They're not bad because no kid is bad, but you thought it was this when it's that. So there's other things at play. I just want you guys to know and bring that awareness that there's a bigger system. We already talked about it at the
Mhm.
level of the check cashiers and things like that, or the supermarket with the pricing. Now the food that they're giving us, whether it's in school, because look in other countries and you'll see the
Yeah.
food that they won't allow that we do. So again, it's not to go off on a tangent, it's to say that this gentleman brought information to me because I'm not the expert in everything. I have some knowledge here, and he took that and ran with it. And that's what we want to do for our friends and our families, to leave
Yeah.
that legacy and say, hey, let's spread this. Let's
Yeah.
not be a financial advisor. I want to be a counselor to share these things, and that way you can take that and share that with other people, right? I hope that makes sense.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. And also, I would also reiterate that the fact that you are correct. You go to school, the universities, people, you get all those diplomas. They're not even halfway. You haven't been educated halfway the way you need to be educated to understand your own personal life and also understand your community. You need to do additional work. And I know by the grace of God, I was able to get that additional work done because I became impacted. Until you're impacted, it's actually sometimes you stay in isolation. Everything is good with me. I don't have to know what's going on in my community. I don't need to know what's going on with the person next door. You go to a church with thousands of members. People are suffering. People are going through emotional and mental issues, mental challenges. Many folks I know during COVID, some people gave up. Literally, they gave up on life, on living. And many times people say, "Oh, poor so and so, did she pray enough?" Like, I'm a person of faith. I pray a lot. I have a strong relationship with Christ. I'm constantly in the Word, and I think definitely one of my coping mechanism is my faith. Is that one of your coping mechanism? Because I know we're talking about that. It's 7:30, so we want to talk a little bit about that. I know mental health for me, one of my number, actually the coping maker, actually I would say the, because of course community, being part of community is also very important to me, because that's why I belong to a very active church and I have friends there and a community. People call me and say, come out, let's be part of community. But for me, faith, because I think it's in Ephesians, it talks about being in perfect peace,
Hmm.
those whose hope are in the Lord. Where do you find your peace? Because I know mental health, one of the reasons, in addition to all the financial issues, is because we lack the peace of God. We lack peace in life. Where do you
Hmm.
find your peace?
I'm glad that you brought the conversation there, because it gets a chance to check multiple boxes. We do want to be in community. It does say it's good for us to come together in a
Yeah.
couple different ways. Not good for man to be alone, and it talks about coming together in one accord. And of
And that's
course,
only, they say alone, people think like, oh, you gotta be married. Yes, marriage is good.
yeah,
But listen,
absolutely.
you need community and other believers
Absolutely.
around you.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
Not alone like in relationship, romantically. No,
Yeah.
alone in terms of isolation, because when we get to
Yeah.
church, we can fellowship with our brothers and sisters. And one thing I
Hmm.
love, pastors Bruce and Karen Wall, at
Yeah.
my church,
Oh, okay, I know
there's an
them.
I knew you
I know
do.
them.
So there's an
Yeah.
opportunity to fellowship, and the visionaries that they are, they brought me in way back when with COVID to talk to the congregation about finances. And then this last season, January, he said, I want this to be a series. So
Mm.
this is how important he was, and it really
Oh,
humbled me. He
yeah.
preempted service because he knows
Yeah.
I already have them here. If I do it on a Saturday, some people are working, some people can't do this, but it's like Sunday service, we're going to do an abridged version, like, half hour, let's say, and
Yeah.
services can go on long. For him to say, no, we're going to cut that so that we can go to the fellowship hall, have a little food and refreshments, and have Curtis and his wife share on finances and these principles and tie
Wow.
it into biblical concepts and things of that nature.
Yeah.
So to be able to fellowship, to not have to be alone, to share these things, and then people can, oh, okay. And people were just coming up afterwards, and we made it a three-part series because we didn't want to just rush through it. We want to let
Yeah.
it land, let it breathe, and then
Yes.
some people can come back and bring other folks who weren't even part of the church. You see how it
Yeah.
happens there? And now they're saying, wow, I
Yeah.
didn't know you guys do things like this. Yes,
Yeah.
because when the rubber meets the road, we know that the cavalry is not coming. We're not expecting the government, I'm not going to go political, but we're not expecting any saviors coming from there. So we have to be the one. It has to be us. So it was so awesome for us to be able to do that in fellowship right after service and do that multiple times. And there was testimonies coming out of that as well. People
Yeah.
who ended up getting their will and
Yeah.
trust done because of things that we talked about, getting their retirement and their insurance
Yeah.
done. That's what
Yeah.
it's about. And I loved being able to do that.
Listen, I know I was going to my own personal saga, but I'm a person who believe I do believe that to whom much is given, much is required. And the knowledge and the I had acquired at school, I wanted to share that freely. And when I did the class at the church, God, Money, and You, like the way it impacted people's lives, folks were coming to me after church saying like, listen, or after the class, listen, you helped me here, you helped me there. That's why I'm someone who's I'm not afraid to testify. That's why I don't know how many people have said that, Curtis, I was in a dark hole. It's almost like the city of Ember. I was in that dark hole trying to get out, knowing that there was a better way, but I didn't know how to get out of that situation. And you the one who would the map and say, Gabrielle, this is where you go. You go this way. And it's always important to remember those who have helped you. That's why if you're watching the show here and you're saying, like, I've learned so much from Let's Talk Money with Friends. And I would like to let my friends, if you are watching, you need to share this with two other friends. Let them know that this is happening because they need to know it. You may not be able to go to the church, invite them to your church, but if you can invite them to something that's so easy to just share live here, share the platform that we have here, it will change their lives. Because I know if you one person can make it, if you can make a difference in one person's life, let me tell you, it's gonna be heavenly, because you will always be remembered, because at the end of the day, what you do for one person is gonna trickle to the next generation. It's generational, correct?
Absolutely. That's what we want to do. And someone asked me a while back, why don't you want to be a financial advisor? And I said, there's nothing wrong with being an advisor. I stand in the gap, though,
Yeah,
between financial advisors and mental health practitioners because mental
correct.
health practitioners don't, talk money at all, and financial advisors don't bring in the mental health aspect. So
Yeah,
since I've been in that gap and a lot of people have fallen through that chasm, that hole, I want to be that connector to say, you know what, if I was just an advisor, I can take your money and put it in Bitcoin 5 years ago because I knew where it was going, and you would have big money now if you did that, but you wouldn't know anything about it. And so if you just got in a frazzled state and spent it, or a situation came up and you spent it, that does you no good. How does that help the next generation? I want to teach you what it feels like to watch a stock or a crypto or what have you go up and down and understand why that's happening. It's not a bad or good thing. These are just natural ebbs and flows. So when you understand that, now you can share that with someone else so they can understand the process of things. So I feel there's something bigger as opposed to me. You know the parable. I was just going to use it differently. I was going to say not teach them in, the fish one. I was going to say when you give them the seeds, they can create an orchard as opposed to me just giving you one apple. So it's the same way
correct.
with, that parable of teaching them because for me, in wrapping, is it's important to understand that all those systemic things that we talked about, that's a constant attack on our senses and our sensibilities. And what it does as a person that's, midlife, nearing 50, if someone looked inside me, they might say, wow, inside you're probably 60 or 65 because of all the things that happen. That's not me just pontificating or bloviating. Those are real things called the weathering hypothesis. And that
Mm,
weathering hypothesis says after a while, if you took a rock, water can make a
yeah.
rock go away, just water, because over time it can damage it. So if it's weathering our inside of our body because of all these things, the systemic, the isms, the racism, classism,
I'm coming.
all of them.
Listen. I'm coming against that for you, okay? Because some study foretells me those who look to him are radiant, and their faces are will never be put to shame. And
Yeah.
I'm coming against that for you because we want you to be around for a long time, okay?
I
And
just
we
use
want
myself as an
you to
example because I
age.
want to beat myself up. I don't want to say
I
that
know
I'm not,
you gotta be
trust you me,
radiant.
I'm 23. Not, what I'm saying?
Now,
So don't,
listen, we're
yes.
gonna reverse it because you're right, Curtis.
hmm
The truth of the matter, racism, sexism,
hmm
ageism, and I don't know, all the
All of them.
isms that we have to deal with on a daily basis.
Hmm
Okay, as people, especially for people of color, you have to find a way to fight back.
Yes.
And for me, it's with the word of God. Okay?
hmm
I meditate on that word day and night,
Day
and I
and
think
night.
it's giving me forever young. Would you say?
Yes, not one wrinkle, not one wrinkle. Go ahead.
Yes, forever young, because at the end of the day, if you know who you are in Christ, you don't let all these things really hold you down. But we know reality is not everybody understand the word like I do. And
Hmm.
also too, not everybody has had the same upbringing that I've had, okay? And their faith is different. So therefore, we saying that tonight, you don't need to internalize shame. There's nothing wrong with you. You haven't done anything wrong. If you're struggling with something, they have resources available that you can reach out to people. You can learn on your own. Google and all that stuff is available. But
Hmm.
if you want to be part of a community, Curtis, can you please invite them to your next or maybe your website so that they could go in and become part of that community and find out more about your next events? Because this conversation here, you remember when you came on and I said, Curtis, we need to have another one because
Absolutely.
this time here is not enough. So yes, would you like to go ahead extend an invitation?
Of course, CLC Consulting is a personal wellness firm that is a welcoming community. We want folks to come on in and be a part of it. We do
Yeah.
things once a month. Tomorrow, for example, we'll have a coffee hour in community right here at our offices in 1544 Columbus Avenue. So if you
Yeah.
reach out to me, you can call me at 617-938-2370. You can drop a text and be a part of our newsletter.
Hmm.
You can also come to some of our events. We do some in the evening, some in the day,
Hmm.
some on Saturdays because we want to reach everybody. You can also follow me on Instagram where I'm most active at CLC Consulting, as you see on the screen. 13
CLC.
CLC Consulting 13 is on Instagram. Of
Yeah.
course, you can go to the website clcconsulting.org,
Yes.
clcconsulting.org. Just ways to tap in. Find me on
Yeah.
LinkedIn. So let's communicate, and let's build, and let's grow.
Join in. Don't be in isolation. Again, going back to the biblical principles that I learned as a child, you cannot be in isolation. Two is better than one, and I believe in the power of what synergy. The Bible talks about one can chase 1,000, but two can put two
Hmm.
thousand to flight.
To
All
flight.
the all the ones who are coming after you, you can put
Hmm.
them to flight if you are with with one other person. Don't do it by yourself because you can only chase 1,000, and I want to chase out 1 million
There
because
you go.
the more gifted and the more
There you
blessed you
go.
are, the more they'll come after you. So it's very important to know that you shouldn't do it in isolation. Be part of a community. Let's Stop Money with Friends is on every Wednesday at 7 p.m. We go live, and we are here to let you know, yes, you can, right? Like
Yes.
Obama.
Amen.
Yes,
Amen.
you can. You can have joy. The joy of the Lord will be your strength,
Hmm.
even in the midst of the worst of the worst. Mental health. We see so many things happening on the news. We see so many things happening every single day. Every single day, people are giving you reason to have mental health issues. I was saying to you earlier, I called an insurance company that I've been with for 7 years that decided to double my premium because of a
Hmm.
minor issue, which wasn't even my fault. But they're
Hmm.
not willing to do the investigation that they need to do, or they're afraid of the other party, and so they want to pin it on me. And I was going through so much. But you know what? I got a girl on the phone. She's like, Gabrielle, don't let them steal your joy. Go
Hmm.
find something else. And I did. And now it's done. So because that community, that person who said don't let them steal your joy. So tonight I'm saying mental health is real. There are some clinical stuff that we're not clinicians, so we didn't talk about the clinical reasons
Hmm.
why some people have mental health issues. Their chemical imbalance and so many things that are outside of the scope of what I know. But I also know that many of us are going through mental health issues because of situational issues. You are in a situation, you don't know how to deal with it, so you're internalizing the shame, the pain, the embarrassment, and everything else because they want you to be embarrassed, my friend. They want you to feel shame. The entire structure is set up to make you feel shame in order for you to keep continue to be victimized. And we are
Hmm.
saying tonight, you don't need to feel shame. Know who you are. If you're a person of faith, get to know who you are in Christ. Okay? If you are a Christian, that is, because there are other religion. But get to know who you are, but also most importantly, find yourself a strong group of people, community that you can embrace, and they will embrace you. You
Right back.
give and you take. Is that your
That's
final word,
community. That's
Curtis? You
community.
give and you take?
That's what it is. I want people to come out. You know, we they're gonna scare you with the new virus and the new this and the new that. You got to come on out. I'm not telling you not to wear a mask. I'm not telling you not to wash your hands, but come on out because we're not gonna let folks keep us in isolation anymore. A lot of violence is perpetuated in silence and separating us. We're coming
Yeah.
together. I want to
And and if
get
I
up.
would like to repeat, oh gosh, I think I had written it down. It says if you yeah, acknowledgement with acknowledgement that you saying like I did something wrong, acknowledgement without self-compassion just becomes another form of punishment.
Yeah,
You're already being punished. You don't need to punish yourself. So come out,
exactly.
come out. If I see you at the next workshop, I will definitely give you a hug and let you know that you are beautiful, you are great. All things are possible, and you gotta believe it. And I'm here for you, and I'm expecting you to be here for me as well. So yes, please tune in next week. Actually, we have another gentleman. So far, I have the show's lineup. This week actually I was supposed to have an attorney on the show to talk about the different documents that you just mentioned, will and trust and
Hmm.
power of attorney. She wasn't able to make it, and that's why I was like so grateful that my friend Curtis was able to take her place.
Always.
And hopefully not next week because I already have someone scheduled. The following week or maybe in June she'll come on the show. We are providing information, but these resources, I do believe, just like I said, we learn them in school. They're not as important as your mental health and as your relational health and
Talk
as
about it.
your spiritual health. Okay, so we want you to invite your friends, let them know next week. I have a gentleman, he lives in Dallas, Texas, and he's an insurance professional just like you and me. But I don't want to do this by myself. I wanted to have multiple voices to come here and to share ideas, concept, because we say money encompasses everything. And we'll continue to talk about everything. God bless you. Have a happy Wednesday. Happy end of the week. And yeah, Benny Global, be blessed, be Benny. Don't hang up, Curtis, but I'll hang up with them. Okay?